I see it. You see what? Salvation. The satisfactory content. Soon. Oh, now we were in for it. The skin on my fingers had melted off, degloving my fingertips, and foolishly I pulled it to try to hold them, trying to squeeze them back on, hoping they would slide back to their correct placement, only to find the skin melted away. Surprisingly, there was no pain. I didn't understand why I cared that he would die. That he was my captor, wasn't he?
The family!
I exclaimed loudly, my eyes wide with fear.
What's happening to me?
I screeched, dreading becoming exactly like him. A monster. A low, choking sound came from his throat, and his eyes became vacant while he leaned back on the floor before a low and long breath came from his lips. The skin slid off his body with a moist, slick sound, and the meat resided in a loose human form with several bullet wounds to his chest. How was he able to exist and function? Now, alone in the cabin, surrounded by hostile forces and without his protection, I didn't know what to do. The wolf-like being still circled around us until I noticed there were two of them. No, three. One lingered well behind the others, close to the whispering shadows that roamed. A gray-haired one, obviously older, and a younger, darker one. The latter being taller, more muscular, and snarled with his fangs bared. The gray lichen changed, with loud bone crunching and twisting until a mortal man stood. Gray-haired, bearded, and with a kindly look in his eye.
Jeffrey, come on. You're not involved in this.
I realized he was speaking to me. Leaving the still sizzling corpse, I went to stare at the man through the window and tried to ignore what lingered around him outside. He had a kindly eye, and another voice spoke, snarling in lichen form.
He's nothing. We need to tear them apart for what happened.
The voice, a harsh, growling roar. No, shh, quiet.
Jeffrey, you're not involved in this. He committed a crime, and we're here to give justice.
He insisted, blue eyes kind. A hand rested on the window frame. When their gaze moved to observe the shadows, he subtly moved so my focus would return to him. How do you know my name? He smiled and lifted a finger to his ear to indicate how he heard it. Not surprising.
You'll be fine. Probably can't go home, but there's a town. You'll be safe. Get a nice job, sorted with a place. None of these.
He gave a dismissive gesture at the place, then back, surrounding us.
None will bother you.
He smiled, reminding me of a wise cowboy figure from a cheesy TV western.
You'll have a new beginning.
The sincere look in his eyes and the promise made me long for a different life. I trusted him. Still, I'd gotten used to my friend, captor, whatever he was now. He'd saved me multiple times. I shook my head, rushing back to him, and stood looking down at my captor's body, thinking of the misery he had placed me under. The cabin creaked, feeling the pressure building from the outside, or something down below.
Open the door. We'll help you.
The words came from behind me. I eyed the door, then back at the figure in the window, and back again. There was something about him that I trusted, and the promise was too great. I scurried. I pulled the stick decoration above the door, stomping it with my boot, feeling it crack under my heel. I rubbed my forearm on the door frames, removing the markings, and a tension built inside my stomach. Guilt, and perhaps a warning. Using my foot to scrape away the line just under the door and shoving it open, causing it to let out a loud creak. The pressure was released, like an exhale. Near enough instantly, a feeling of shadow entered the building, filling it, and I struggled to breathe. Over time, I had gotten used to his questionable aroma, yet this... I doubled over, head resting on my stomach, and gripped it tightly. It smelled of smoke, incense, and a hint of something I couldn't put my finger on. I coughed, watching, and my concern dismissed while the realization set in. The two lichens approached him, and weak as a kitten, he attempted to feebly pull his body away. A sharp pang of guilt grasps me. Samuel Abbott, also known as the Corpse Walker, you've committed crimes against the Escherville Pack. And as Lupa's guardsmen, we have come to give you justice, the Grey One said firmly. Then his tone changed, gripped with frustration and a hint of disrespect, while his fingers twitched a little. I could smell the faint aroma of tobacco from him. Under the authority of the council. So that was his name. It wasn't one that I expected, but Corpse Walker. What kind of cheesy bullshit name was that? After all this time, I knew his identity. Not that it mattered now. I don't think it was right. I knew he killed humans, toying with them and taking their skin, but taking him when he was dying, it felt wrong. I tried to block their path, standing up to them, only to receive an amused scoff by the Grey Elder. Another man, the younger, changed back into his human form with a long grunt, breathing deeply, who appeared more comfortable in mortal form, and placed a hand on my shoulder. Let it happen. Don't get in the way. Tristan guided and blocked my path. Why did I feel guilt when Samael was lifted from the floor? Wow, a betrayal, after all I've done for you. The Corpse Walker winced slowly, rasping for breath as he was pulled up by his arms, only to have them be nearly pulled from his sockets. His body flopped, seemingly losing all control over itself. They dragged him on the floor, leaving a trail of fluid behind him, until the younger took pity on him, lifting his legs to ease the pressure on his spine. I stared at him, aghast. Did he forget how we met? Once more, how was he alive? Seeing him so bare disturbed me. The meat appeared to disintegrate when they touched him, sticking to their hands and arms as they let out a disgusted grunt. You have a deep, dark hole waiting for you, Corpse Walker. I wonder which will be worse. The animalistic snarl came, pulling him close so they were nose to nose. Personally, if it were up to me, your corpse would be cut up and sent out to every part of the world. If you wanted to get close with me, he dry retched, giving a smile around his rotting flesh. Little furball. All you had to do was ask. I knew that would do it. They jumped when a long, deep groan came from under the floorboards, and the cabin trembled. Every speck of dust, now airborne, circling in the air. The lichens, both in beast and mortal form, glanced around the room, seeing something. Wow. He coughed up a thick blob of congealed blood. Look who's finally awake. What's going on? Tristan, Sarge, we need to get out of here. Greyjoy panicked, looking around, seeking out the source as the cabin's spirits rose in defiance. You're right, let's go. Tristan agreed in haste in human form, and I noticed a scar from a bullet that had whizzed past his arm. I knew we shouldn't have trusted him. The larger one advanced toward me, evidently who went by the name Sarge, having his arm grasped by Greyjoy, clearly alarmed. The elder transformed back, pushing in front and snarling to cause the other to step back, head raised, teeth bared, and the other responded in the same way, not backing down. Tristan, get over here. Help me with them. A smaller lichen came, taking the other by the shoulder and pulling him outside. The larger one stared me down. Even with a weapon, I doubted there was much I could do. The police, they're on the way, I murmured, not believing it myself. They're not coming, came the terrifying reply. The flash of fangs close to my face warned me. The second low, longing moan came when a woman's hand broke through the floorboards and a corpse pulled herself up and out. Her skin a grayish green, taunt to her skeleton, and black hair matted with living and undead cockroaches, all wriggling, hissing at them. Her eyes had been plucked out, leaving nothing but barren pits. By this point, I had seen more than my share of supernatural creatures, and what concerned me was the fear all of them showed her. She grunted, pulling out a large bone of unknown origin, and struck the floorboards with it, before pointing it in their direction and struck the ground. It was only now I realized that her lips were bound with thick, black twine. Once, twice, and before the third, the lichens made a hasty retreat and left us there.
Ah, mother dearest,
A muffled scream came, and she pointed the bone at him.
Oh, fuck. Quick, pick me up, sweet cheeks,
he said, raising his arms up at me, and the last thing I wanted to do was give him uppies. However, considering his condition, I had no choice. I scooped him up, running outside to see that dawn had risen and allowed us reprieve from the power of the lichens. Looking around, I saw the large footprints they had left while they made their escape. I put him down, only to see all the cars had been trashed with deep scratch marks, with the fuel leaking down on the floor. There was no way either of us would be able to fix it, removing our best chance of escape. Fuck. We couldn't stay here. And again, we walked. He seemed to be a little better, but I knew he'd have to hunt again soon to get a new suit of skin. I doubted we managed to find a hiker this far out, and hoped that my hide wouldn't suffice for his needs. Winded, I slowed down to catch my breath. A hand rested on an old, weathered oak, and realized we'd gone deeper into the forest, a place he had always cautioned me about. The pain slowly eased, and my mind raced with questions. Just what the fuck did he do? I knew I was protecting a murderer, but he only killed bad people, right? My thoughts raced. Hey! I heard him moan behind me, barely able to walk with a hand lifted before feebly dropping down to the floor. I can't walk. You're gonna need to carry me. I felt pity for him. Weak as a kitten, his limbs light and without the weight of the additional skin, and otherwise, I wanted to leave him here to his fate. However, unwilling to die yet, I lifted him up, supporting his back and hooking my arm under his knees, pressing him against my chest. Walking down the steep dirt path, it was difficult moving through, and strangely, the area beside the path looked easier to cross, before I could take a step on the easier ground. Never leave the path, he whispered weakly. I stepped over the tree branches of the ancient and young trees, ignoring the whispering from the trees and the pleads, encouraging me to step off, telling me that they would guide me home. While not shocking, I didn't know what I could trust. I couldn't even trust myself. Carrying him wasn't a struggle, although his flopped body in my arms didn't help, and the occasional whine when I brushed on a stray branch. We made it a decent way. I glanced over my shoulder, knowing anything would be able to hunt us with the blood and fluid left behind. Keeping my gaze focused on my path, I noticed a dip in the tree line and breathed a sigh of relief when I stood on the edge. We continued until we reached a car park, overgrown and hadn't been maintained in some time. The trash bins were spilled, having been looted long ago by a devious raccoon. An old green hatch wagon and a sedan were all that remained. Rusted with busted tires, they wouldn't be of any use. With a defeated exhale, he wriggled in my arms and swatted at my chest. Hey, alright, sugar, you're gonna make me feel the kind of way. He purred, patting my chest, and I dropped my hands beneath him, nearly causing him to fall to the floor and leaving a sticky, telltale goo that followed him everywhere all over me.
What?
I snapped. I may have... He coughed, clearing his throat. Lied to you, because I didn't want to walk. I stared at him in agitation.
Why?
He had already wandered off to one of the cars, wiping the windows and peering inside. Realizing he wasn't going to find what he needed to, he kicked the sedan and walked to the hatchback. I didn't bother to ask about the fate of the owners of the vehicles. A long howl in the distance told us we weren't alone, and the lichens had been circling around us.
What are you doing? Where did I leave that little Snuckums?
He opened the trunk. It was filled with boxes, moldy food, and bits and pieces, rummaging through it, dropping it all on the floor.
My pretty, where are you?
He cooed, and on all fours, my eyes got the shock of my life when I noticed a certain view and darted my eyes away with a distinct, ugh. Silently, I prayed he wouldn't notice. Unfortunately, I did.
One look is free. The second's gonna cost you, baby cakes.
More items were tossed on the floor, and I wondered about the fates of the original owners of it all. He held out what looked like an alligator torso, the mouth half destroyed, and while it smelled, it didn't compare to the foul aroma of my captor and friend.
Looky, looky.
He held him over me, running a skinless hand over it, caressing it tenderly, and it jerked awake, now alive.
Isn't she beautiful? What a darling. What the hell?
The exasperated reply came. Suddenly, he stuffed his hands down her throat and pulled out a packet of chips that had seen better days. With a squeal of glee, he tore open the package and ate.
I knew she stole my chips.
He grumbled to himself, sulking, and tossed the empty packet aside.
Who were they?
I insisted. He raised a hand to his ear, listening out into the scenery, and ignored me.
Wouldn't mind giving me a lift, Muffin.
I shot him a dirty look, crossing my arms and stared down at my fingertips. They no longer hurt. I strode over to him, grabbed him by the shoulder, and shook him, shoving my bone fingertips into his face.
What is happening to me?
He looked down at my hand with an irritated look, and he frowned. With a sigh, I released him, and he dusted off where my hand had dared touch him, flicking off the imaginary dirt off his pristinely filthy form.
Are you in pain?
No, he scoffed.
Well, you should be.
If you were, well. He opened his mouth, waved his hand to decipher which word would be best.
Human?
His voice heightened in pitch, a wince on his lips.
What?
Samael ignored me.
Listen up, corpse walker.
His name dripping with sarcasm, and it felt good to give him a taste of his own medicine.
Tell me what happened to me.
He turns to look at me, put his hands up, and mocked me.
Oh, damn, sweetness, someone is getting mighty sassy. And you don't need to use that name for me.
He eyed me up, and his top lip curled.
You don't want to know why they gave me that name, baby cakes.
He had a point. Looking down off the path, I wondered whether, after all this time, I should make my escape. Try to find salvation and freedom, even if it meant death. Samael must have heard something in the distance, when he paused suddenly and lifted his leg over the wooden boundary line, heading down the steep cliff and fumbling through the undergrowth, through the area we'd been warned not to tread. The various branches moved with every single step, swaying until I couldn't even see the shadow of his outline anymore. The sun was now up, and the whispers had grown quiet over time. I sighed, and it was easy to follow his path with a series of broken branches, and knew that I had made a mistake. I heard people before I saw them, and realized what they were. A family with a gray Toyota 4Runner that didn't look like it belonged out here, and a tent with a campfire, a metal tray over the top as the warm aroma of food sizzling could be heard. How they weren't impacted by whatever roamed the forest was well beyond me. They were close to a lake that I hadn't been to since a high school camp. I remembered avoiding the camp activities, preferring to stay in my tent, only coming out to follow Emma around like a lost puppy, always at a distance and never speaking a word to her. A life that I felt little to no connection to now. I could barely remember her face, despite my previous obsession with her. It was two dads with their kids, a boy and a girl, who were chatting while breakfast was being cooked on the gas stove. I stopped, hidden when I saw their happiness, and knew what would occur. One of the dads left to take a leak by one of the trees, unzipped his fly, and suddenly, Samael choked him from behind. The man's arms flailed, and he briefly tried to fight back before he died and fell down. I kept looking back to the man's family. None of them were alerted by what happened. He sliced down the sternum, pulling away the skin from each of the limbs, and turned him into a human skin suit, placing his body inside, patting it down, and it stuck to him. And looking away, I couldn't watch. No one looked the same. The expressions and how the skin set on his skull always looked different. Samael got up, stretched from side to side in the distance, picking the wallet and something else off of the corpse. I rolled my eyes. Murder no longer questionable, and relieved he wouldn't be using me for his suit.
Andrew, where are you?
His lover called out, a plate of fresh food ready, and I stepped out from the cover of the tree line. It was dropped on the ground, the bacon, hash browns, and biscuits scattered on the grass as he was taken back, covered in grime, and it was only when I heard the children's frightened screams did I realize what I looked like.
Are you okay?
He asked me, concerned yet guarded.
No, leave them alone, please.
I anguished, rushing over to stand between them.
Andrew?
He reached for a loaded pistol, pointing it at me, determined, and he held it with experience.
Stay back. Do not come any closer.
The voice of someone sure of themselves. Had he been forced to use the weapon before? I suspected if the children weren't with him, he would have been much more friendly.
You need to get in your car, grab your kids, and just get out. Please, you have to hurry.
I pleaded, my hands open to show I was unarmed. It was too late. Naked in Andrew's skin, and still struggling to get used to the change. I saw him walk behind his husband, stretched his head sharply to one side, wrapped his arm around his shoulders, and placed a tender kiss on his cheek, and slit the lover's throat with his long thumb claw. All before he could react, he held the hand with the gun, not permitting any of us to get shot. He bled out with a burst of blood coating the two children, who screamed, standing up, holding each other.
Hey, no, don't hurt them too.
I rushed to put myself between him and my captor, Samael. He smirked at me. The black beard moved as he scratched his eyebrow with his thumb, while the other man gurgled his last breath, dying at his feet. Samael reached down to the gun, put the safety on, and ejected the magazine. Tossing it into the river while the kids screamed caused him to stomp his foot in irritation. Samael waited for a while, then sighed.
Boy, you two can stop pretending now. You got Sugar Plum's panties in a twist.
What? Their faces grew gray and the human features faded away. Their hands now clawed and webbed scaly skin and large gills for a life in the water. Eyes became puny, but many teeth, lamprey-like expressions of a twisted, circular smile.
What the fuck are you?
They laughed at me before running toward the lake and leaping into the water with a loud splash, swimming around in the water, better suited there to being on land. It was only when I saw two small floating corpses drifting aimlessly in the distance did I realize their actual children were dead. Their places taken by the two imposters. I was about to ask when.
Trust me, you don't want to know what they were planning for these two dummies. This,
Samael commented, pointed two thumbs toward him with a hint of pride,
was a mercy killing.
I could be bothered to ask why, when a sudden dryness filled my throat. Licking my lips, I tried to moisten them, and suddenly I felt hungry. A long, growling moan, not wishing for it to go to waste. I stared, eyeing up their breakfast. I lifted up one of the hash browns, and it was the first real and pleasant warm food I'd eaten, but when I took a bite, it tasted rancid. I spat it out on the grass, coughing and vomiting, while he watched me out of the corner of his eye. Samael sat on one of the plastic fold-up chairs and leaned back, perfectly comfortable, and picked up the other from the floor, taking a bite, chewing with his mouth open, and gave me a wink.
What's happening to me?
Well, my little pumpkin pie, it would seem that you can no longer stomach mortal food. Samael closed his eyes, making a moaning sounds that bordered on intimate at how delicious it was, and kept eating the hash brown with overly exaggerated expressions of bliss. My stomach growled again. In confusion, I wondered the source and realized that it came from the fresh corpse. Looking down at him, not even knowing his name, and regretting coming across him, whose eyes stared blankly up into nothingness. I crouched, giving the side a firm poke, ignoring how Samael sat, turning his head around, and kept an eye on me. Other than the birds chirping, the only sound was his obnoxious chewing in my ear. I knelt in the still warm blood, and placed my hands on his chest, staring at his face, and drawn by a pull I had never experienced before. I pulled down his bottom lip, the skin moved, and I rapidly withdrew my hand. "Ah, I knew it. Fucking weirdo," Samael whispered to himself, unbuttoning the dead man's shirt to reveal his still stomach. I heard the chair creak and Samael's voice.
I never took you as one of those kinds, Blossom.
"Shut up," I growled between clenched teeth, tears of anger and helplessness in my hands as my body reacted, a will of its own. I plunged my hand, fingers pointed, but without them being sharp, it didn't work the first time, only to try again and again, barely puncturing the skin and moving through the layers. "Please, please, stop me." I kept going, closing my eyes to block it out, until finally, my hand was surrounded by the moist splattering of his insides. I kept plunging, moving past muscle and a thin layer of fat until I managed to pull out an intestine, the part I was aiming for, shrieking in horror as my teeth wrapped around it, pulling on it, taking a bite and swallowing, hoping beyond hope. One bite was enough, yet I couldn't stop myself. Samael turned the chair around to get a better view, leaning closer with his hand under his chin to observe the sight. I closed my eyes so I could block him out while I gorged myself, and only just now found a brief peace of contentment. I ate until I could no more and fell backward, staring up at the night sky. He still sat in the chair, picking at his teeth with a toothpick, and flicked it onto the grass close to my head. My stomach ached, and the contentment was waning quickly. I couldn't imagine what I'd do if I'd been left alone with living people. Would I eat someone while their bodies squirmed and they begged me to stop? I hated myself at this moment. "What am I?" I whispered, a sob at the back of my throat, my eyes wet with tears. Samael leaned down and rubbed my bloated stomach before giving it a tap. "You're a growing boy, sugar," then frowned. His hand withdrew before it ran over his beard, avoiding my gaze, and sighed. Shoulders briefly slumped, and he stared out at the lake with the most sincere expression I'd seen from him.
Suppose I should tell you some things.
His beer bottle rested on his thigh. The new skin gave him a new vigor, and I was surprised he hadn't started to eat yet.
Ever wonder how you survive things you shouldn't?
I didn't answer. He cleared his throat, and I believed he was trying to tell me in the most gentle way possible, and that was concerning.
You haven't exactly been alive for some time now, and you may have fed or attacked someone if you managed to find them.
I couldn't tell if it was another of his elaborate games, always at my expense. I tried to think back to the night I first met him, back when I was devoted to my vendetta, yearning to be a hero, wanting to be loved and curious when exactly it was that I passed away. How long was I dead for? Staring up at the sky, realizing that I hadn't been part of the world I desired to return to, only for it all to make sense. I belonged out here.
You're taking this surprisingly well, Muffin. I expected you to freak out, scream, and otherwise be dramatic.
Idly tapping his hands together.
Yet, here you are, relaxing during a nice camping trip.
He was right.
I should have been upset, worried, or concerned. Silence passed between us, with only the sound of the late-night forest surrounding us, the sound of children's laughter while they played in the water, morbid and worrying. Are the lichens going to come hunt us? He opened the cooler, rummaging around the remaining bottles and watery eyes, before taking out a beer and cracking it open before handing it to me. I accepted it, taking it in my hand, and hesitated trying it while he got his own. Probably not tonight, sunshine. Don't worry, we'll be okay.
Gonna tell me what happened?
I may have allegedly killed someone near and dear to their pack. Samael waved his hands, mocking them, and shrugged. So they're gonna come kill me, or whatever.
Or whatever?
It reminded me of someone trying to sound like a 90s Valley girl. He didn't respond. Who was she? Up at the cabin? I asked, figuring out to get yet another evasive answer about his life and the world. Her. He snorted. I told you. Mother Dearest, she's quite antisocial. I didn't like being disturbed or having her place messed up.
Why was the place a mess?
Samael gave me a kick to the ribs, causing me to grunt and wriggle away from him. Hey, manners. And he froze, eyes scanning the horizon before stopping, and his lips took on a firm line.
What is it?
It was only now I realized that there were no sounds. The forest was silent, and he started stripping the rest of the clothing off the corpse, putting on the bloodied jeans and leaving the plaid shirt unbuttoned. Samael posed for a moment to check out the fit. I noticed he left none for me, unless I went after Andrew. What's wrong? You can't hear them, cutie? He inquired, amused, and pointed to the glowing yellow eyes in the tree line. My stomach twisted in fear, knowing there was little we could do to prevent them from attacking us. All of them were in beast form, slowly advancing toward us, and I was sure they didn't want to speak now. It isn't like dogs are capable of being quiet. Samael raised his voice on purpose, loud enough for them to hear him. I grabbed his leg, tugging on it, trying to get him to shut up, and knew our survival had been a matter of chance. Hey, shut up, I hissed at him. His arms opened wide, and a wide, unhinged grin appeared on his face, and kicked the chair away, removing our already limited cover to expose our position. Samael walked toward them, slowly, fearlessly. Hello, darlings. Your tail's out from under your legs? I heard a chorus of growls and howls one could only assume was a battle cry. The three large beasts charged over to us, making considerable ground. Struggling, I got to my feet and looked around for a weapon, wishing he hadn't ejected the magazine from the gun. Oh, we're in for some fun. He grinned over his shoulder at me and ran toward them.
Thank you for listening and delving with me into the dark together.
Please remember to leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you feel so inclined. The more engagement this video gets, the more YouTube will push my content to others.
Thus, the following will grow.
All stories read in this channel will be available on Spotify, iTunes, and just about everywhere else. Links in the description.
Thank you for listening and feeding the cause. We'll be seeing you